Warning, don't make this mistake because you can't relate. Why do people hate people based off skin color and their differences, man? So, this subject matter, this topic came on my spirit a few days ago. I'm just now, putting the video down, recording it in context, but it's interesting enough that we live in a day and age, and we live in an existence, not even a day and age. This has been occurring since the beginning of time, to where there's a deep-rooted misunderstanding tied to the fact that you can't find, or maybe even on the surface level, a lot of people can't connect or relate to other people because of differences of culture, languages, appearance, background, upbringing. The bottom line is that people don't care to understand anymore or have an open heart to come together in unity and community and in love. We dismiss people because they are different than us. We don't tend to adhere to people or cater to people or serve people because we can't relate to them, because they grew up differently. Sure, there is a foundational standard or a trend, right, or pattern that we see amongst certain communities. So I wouldn't holistically tie it to the fact that people just are misunderstood or people can't relate. I would tie it to seeing certain patterns and people have a negative perception of other individuals. Like, let's keep it honest. A lot of people don't like black people or African Americans because of the stereotypes, right? We do see some of the crime rates, some of the crime tied to black people or black individuals, right? So I guess there's a stigma tied to the fact that every black person is evil. Every black person robs, steals, and kills. Now, I think black individuals tend to be at the forefront with this conversation, but if you look at any other race, there's stigmas tied to any other race, right? People from the Middle East, when 9/11 occurred, everybody thought that they were a terrorist, right? People were fearful of these folks because of what came before, right? So it's literally cause and effect. And I don't want to take time to focus on that in today's video because wisdom and discernment leans into pattern. Wisdom and understanding leans into, hey, if the stove's hot and I touch it and it burns me, I understand that the stove's hot, right? But I think in today's age more than ever, even with how hectic it is, that we need to be more open-minded in being receptive to others. Hey, Christ is coming back. Christ is returning. I believe in the Lord our God. I believe in purpose or deeper depths to empathizing and loving others and having a servitude or servant mentality. Leaning or coinciding with the oppressed, people who are injustices overall, right? Because I'm an example of not every shoe fits, right? People don't really give me a chance when I walk out into the world because of my appearance. They assume that I'm a criminal because of my skin color. And it's a sad reality, but I think this is how the world is naturally getting colder, right? In the last days, I don't think a lot of people will empathize. A lot of people don't sympathize. A lot of people are self-centered. People are focused on themselves, their smartphones, their devices. They're walking with their head down. They're on social media, right? People are more selfish than ever before. So people will say that I'm contradicting myself in this video, but I'm not. Because I do understand having a certain understanding of the world. If there's a bad neighborhood, a lot of theft and robbery occurs there. Am I gonna move to that neighborhood? No, right? Because I understand that I'm putting myself in a bad predicament. So I still advise people to be sharp, to use discernment and use wisdom. But I think there's a huge difference between using discernment and wisdom and just being fearful of somebody because of the stigma, right? We could flip it on the other hand. Some minorities think all white people are racist. Obviously, that's not true. There's good people in every cultural background and ethnic group. There's people with good hearts. There's people who care. There's people who have empathy and sympathy. let's align with empathy. I'm not a huge fan of sympathy. Empathy is putting yourself in that person's shoes and being relatable versus sympathy, just, aww. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really like to use sympathy too much. But, you know, I love all people. I encourage people. And we're at a day and age to where there's a huge racial divide. And it's not just white versus black. You're seeing it in all the Latin community. You're seeing it in even Asian community. Like, you're seeing it in all ethnic groups to where I think a lot of people are being pinned against each other. It's all about staying with your race. And to each their own. To each their own. But I think that we should naturally have open hearts as people, just to have common decency, to try to figure out and understand. But we're in a world to where people don't want to understand anymore. I'm gonna live about my life and I'm not gonna care about anyone else. But to love your life is to lose it, man. To love your life is to lose it. You have to be open-minded in today's day and age. Don't take my word for it. Read up on scripture. And maybe if you could care less about the 2 cents that I'm spitting, hey, I appreciate you for even coming through and watching for a second or a moment. But I think that us being a little bit more open-minded and not dismissing people because he was raised that way and I wasn't. He's black, he talk away and I wasn't. You know, he grew up in India and I didn't. I can't relate to him. People will be very surprised to understand or come to the realization that we have more in common than we have apart. And I think the beauty of, or the uniqueness of the world is the diversity. We can learn from each other in different aspects, different parameters. There's some cultural influences that you could learn from another culture that could likely suit you if you were more receptive. And I think naturally everybody wants to harp on this is the land of the free, home of the brave, to where what makes America beautiful is the melting pot. But then you have other folks who just think it's about this like racial predominance. And it's like we're all foreigners. Like, you know, you have certain white folks that think that America should only be a white man's country. And it's like, white people aren't indigenous to America. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can trace the origins back to Europe. So it's like, there's so much ignorance and confusion, let alone in some of the the statements that people are spewing, that it's just pure ignorance and stupidity. And I think part of this is just the enemy's plan to have a hateful nature and be about this one race, one world type of thing. And do I think that it'll ever go away? No, I certainly don't. I think that the wickedness will always exist, but I don't think it'll prevail. And, you know, I like to use my voice to speak on these kind of things, but a lot of people take these kind of conversation topics as the cliche and, oh, we don't want to hear this rah-rah, this mumbo-jumbo, you know, treat others how you need to be treated, the golden rule type of stuff. A lot of people see that as corny, lame, and that's not the reality of the world. But to flip it on its side, the reality of the world is destruction, greed, hate, insecurity, living in a facade, because no real life is lived through just pure hatred for somebody else, thinking that you're, you know, a supreme race or a supreme being. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny how people take this type of attitude in life, that they're the supreme and like you should bow down to me. But there's a lot of like flaws within that prerogative. Like, if you were supreme, you wouldn't have dependence on anything or anyone else. And we've seen a lot of examples throughout history to where us as individuals have always been dependent on other people. You know what I'm saying? You could take it back to the slave trade if you wanted to. If you were supreme in that sense, nobody needed to do work back in the slave trade. You know what I mean? Like, you would be efficient on your own. So it's just, and that's one of a zillion examples. I think that we're better together than apart as people, not this race here and this race here. And I think a lot of the segregation and separation stems from fear, misunderstanding, confusion. And I think a lot of people's nature and character comes from acting out. And I'm talking about, you know, from the Middle Eastern community to the, you know, black community to the white community. Like, people are fearful all the time. And people are more fearful of black people more than any other race. And a lot of people will pop up in the comments and say things along the lines of, I mean, can you be mad at us? Like, can you like, I'm not, but I think that if people took time to understand that not everything is surface level, to where there's layers that you can peel back and there's things that are at a certain root, that there's an explanation for everything. Stupidity is stupidity, crime is crime, evil is evil. But there's always a reasoning behind every single thing. It's not just a people or a group of people that act away because that's their DNA, that's their nature. And there's so many false narratives being spewed across the globe that I think that we won't ever find the answer to holistically in this life, in this realm. I think that we'll find the answers in the next life, right? When we pass on, when we get the true understanding and we get to really look and recollect at our life and, you know, how God sums up our life and the choices we made and the things we did and how we treated people. Nobody will fully understand, but there's been a lot of deception in terms of history, in terms of cultures, in terms of people, different countries, how countries were colonized and conquered, to where a lot of that history has been erased and there's, you know, false narratives being spewed out. You know, that's why a lot of people encourage getting to know who you are truly and your lineage and your family timeline, because these kind of things open up doors to other questions and a developed understanding that you'll find just in life, man. So, you know, I hate to ramble, but I don't, because I think a lot of what I talk about on this channel is philosophical. We talk about a lot of outstanding topics, but the bottom line, if you'll take anything from this video, is have empathy for other people, have love, and understand that not everybody's evil. You know, move with wisdom and understanding of when to, you know, have a certain encounter, when to approach, when to help somebody who's in need. But to live life as cold-hearted as we're seeing life being reflected as today is disgusting. And I think that it only hurts you more than anyone else. You know, there's a lot of believers who say they believe in God, but they don't take God up upon a, you know, every man is created in his image. So it's like, really evaluate your faith and who you really believe in. What God do you believe in if you hate someone else? For you to hate someone else is for you to hate Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Because for what you've done upon, you know, the lowest of the low or the poorest of the poor is what you've done to him. You know, so I'll try to open up my heart more and more. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm perfect, but I do understand that I need to give grace to people. I need to let someone show their true colors first before I just condemn them or make them an outcast. So peace, love, prosperity. I pray God blesses y'all. I pray the goodness, grace, and mercy touches every single person hearing my voice. The goodness, grace, and mercy of Jesus Christ, man. Peace, love. We'll see you on the next one, man.